Welcome into the Toyota Lounge for the DNVR Avalanche Podcast, powered by your Front Range Toyota dealerships. We got Eric, we got Rudo, we got Giz back in studio with us, and Megan will be joining us shortly. We're talking NHL rivalries today. Is this just an Avs Wings thing, or is this an everybody thing where it feels like rivalries just aren't like they used to be in the NHL?
I kind of feel like they're maybe not the way they used to be. We were just talking about that before we sat down.
Yep.
I don't think, I'm not sure if there's been anything quite like the Avalanche Red Wing rivalry from the mid to late 90s in any recent history, and I can't really recall it being that intense before then either. I mean, I think that might exist as one of the greatest, if not the greatest rivalry ever in any sports.
Yeah, agree.
I mean, that was literally bloody. I mean, I remember those. I was a hockey player at the time, but heck, my mom would and my mom's a tough Sicilian woman, but I think she covered my eyes a couple of times when those fights were going on.
It was nuts, and we've talked about it, Rudo, on the show, right? I mean, it was nuts, man. It was so fun. I got to be honest with you, when the schedule came out every year, you'd circle it right away. You're like, oh, my God, January 12th and whatever, Those are the two home games. Why do I say that? Because around town, you were asked all the time, hey, what are you doing with your tickets? What are you going to do with your tickets? You know what I mean? And I'm telling you, it was gold around town. It was ridiculous. It was so fun. I loved it. But it was something that was special. And again, you got to remember where I'm from too. I'm from Montreal, and growing up, the Montreal-Quebec rivalry was absolutely unbelievable. It was something that was phenomenal. You had that Vendredi Saint, which again, I don't remember what it is in English, but it was the Friday of Easter, right? So whatever they want to call it. I don't remember what the expression is in English, but it
Massacre
was
or something. Yeah.
Good Friday?
That brawl that Montreal and Quebec had, and a Good Friday Massacre or something like that. It was unbelievable, and I was there at the game. It was incredible. When I say incredible, it's it's not something you see every day. You're just sitting there and you're like, what is going on? You know what I mean? And rivalries are born in the playoffs, as we know, and rivalries are born from incidents, as we know now with Avs and Detroit. But they're fun to be a part of. They're fun for the fans. It's fun to talk about it at work the next day. It doesn't matter any type of work. And yeah, you're right. I don't think you have those nowadays right now. At least I don't see anything that would rival, no pun intended, from that documentary. But the Red Wings Avalanche right now, I don't think anything comes close to it.
The only one that kind of I thought would spark it, and we were kind of together on this one a little bit, was the year number 2, year 2 Vegas, San Jose, when the injury, the supposed injury happened, the bleeding from the middle of the helmet. I don't remember now who the guy was that got hit. My brain just went blanked on it. It's Pavelski, right? Right. Pavelski goes down. There's a 5-minute major. Vegas crumples, gives up 1 million goals, loses the game. But I remember looking back on it being I did not see where the penalty was, because I think it was Cody Eakin who hit him.
Yeah, I forget.
Who's one of the nicest guys in the world. I gave 2 penalties the entire game. And then he's Pavelski's bleeding from the top inside of his helmet. Yeah. And everybody's like, the heck did that come from? Was it a ketchup packet? Was it a, whatever? And I kind of sort of thought that next season there would be some more drama between Vegas and San Jose, and then the Pete DeBoer, Steve Spott coach swap. There's just a million different things that happen there.
I think that's a good example of why it's been so hard for a lot of rivalries in the modern game. Because Vegas and San Jose was building up to something, and then San Jose fell off a cliff. Now they're just a bad hockey team. It's hard to have real rivals when you're just a bad hockey team. I think you can kind of look at the battle for Alberta too, which I know Eric was a part of in the front office. It kind of switched roles. For a while, it was Calgary that was the significantly better team there. Now it's Edmonton dominating that. I don't know. How do you get those to actually spark beyond that, just the two teams playing each other and into a rivalry.
You're right, because it stems from wins and losses. You're bang on. Battle of Alberta, if you catch a game, and if it's early October and everybody's, they're exciting. If you catch one team's struggling and the other one's like doing well, then it's not much to it. And I don't care. Oh, come on now, we have pride and all that kind of stuff. It's not the same thing. I'll say at the NHL level. Now, at the college level, I think you're going to see it because it's the, whatever it is, that one game, if it's DU versus CC and CC strong, it doesn't matter. It's their Stanley Cup or whatever it is. And again, both are doing well right now, but you know what I mean? But I think that if one was doing not well and the other one was doing well, I think you could still see the rivalry because alumni get behind it. And, it becomes more like a big show, a big spectacle. Where in the NHL, I think you got to be winning to, and that's why playoffs, it's for something. You're winning. You're playing for the Stanley Cup. You know what I mean? So that's where I think battles are born. That's where scars are made and history is made. So you're right. I think you're bang on. You have to have two teams that are successful, and that makes it so much more interesting, and the plot is so much more fun.
I would say the only other big recent rivalry that I remember, and it never got bloody, but I don't think it has to be bloody to be a rivalry like the Avs and Red Wings. Those were two good teams that also just despised each other. But Chicago, Los Angeles, when they were trading cups,
sure,
for 5 years was pretty crazy. I mean, that was always something. I mean, I was living in LA at the time and close with a bunch of the guys on the Kings, and there was no love lost between those two teams. I mean, you always knew heading into the playoffs that was going to be a thing. And I think the cool thing about that is I really don't know on any given year if you really knew who was going to pull that off. I think you had your favorites. Like the years that Chicago won the cup, everybody's like, Chicago's probably winning the cup. But then when the Kings won it, you were like, okay, the Kings are in pretty good shape here. But when those two teams met it was always like the early or conference finals, you were like, hey, this is kind of anybody's to have.
It's funny. I was pretty young back then, but the online sentiment back then was always Operation Regicide to get the Kings out of the playoffs after they won their cups. So
right.
The Kings were definitely not super well liked back then. Chicago, the original six teams
beloved
always have huge backings.
Yeah,
so it's hard with the 06 teams to fight against them sometimes, but is what it is on that front. We'll get back to the NHL a little bit. I do want to jump into the Avs here because I don't know how long of a conversation this will really be for Colorado. I don't believe that there's a real rival for Colorado right now. You guys might disagree with me on that, but we'll phrase it this way. Who is the closest to being the Avalanche rival today?
Megs?
So, in looking at what made some of the past rivalries successful, it was the playoff conversation. How often were different teams a requirement in another team's path to the cup? And so I think for Avs and Red Wings, that was a guaranteed Western Conference final and a path to the cup. And so they were meeting frequently in the postseason. So for Colorado, I'm kind of looking Western Conference final and before that. And so Vegas, I think, started to enter that conversation just because of the possibility that they're going to see each other in the playoffs year after year, so long as both of these teams are competitive. And it's interesting, Dallas has probably entered that conversation a little bit too then as a result. Edmonton probably would have been in there too. We might have been talking about this with more present terms had the Dallas series gone a little bit differently for Colorado. And so to that end, I think it's a lot of, Vegas, it's the teams at the top in the West. And it feels obvious to say as much, but I think the added spite of the fan perception around Vegas is what gives rise to that being a possible rivalry, because a lot of what boosts a rivalry too is how the fans respond to it. And so I think Avs fans would be pretty passionately hating Dallas at the moment, but I think there's not a lot of love for Vegas around the league because of the cap circumvention business. And so that's where I see the most possibility for rivalry, but it's just not like it was
for sure
back then.
We were talking about talked about Vegas earlier. I think part of the animosity that comes for them is that they're not cheating per se, but come on.
But they're cheating, yeah. Legally cheating.
I mean, come on. Pull the same thing twice in a row. It's like, come on now. Like, all right.
When Mark Stone goes on IR in February, everyone's going to go, here we go again.
Exactly. Exactly.
You're not cheating. You're not trying to win. So it's all right.
If you're not rubbing, you're not racing. Same.
Come on. But,
go ahead, E.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to add, like, I think it all depends how they're going to do this year on the ice. And it's Utah, right? I mean, let's just be honest here. Proximity, maybe you're talking about, what, a 5-6 hour drive from Denver? So probably the closest team, geography I failed when I was in high school, but whatever. I'm assuming that's the closest one. But again, it's going to have to, they're going to have to put some wins on the ice, because we all know the Avs are going to put wins on the ice. And now if Utah can put some wins on the ice, and then maybe there's somehow like a representation of them against the Avs in the playoffs, maybe you can ignite something, for years to come. Who knows? We'll see. I think time will tell. But as far as saying that, I agree, to say who is it, right now, I can't pinpoint it, besides, like you guys are saying, Vegas, everybody hates them for all the reasons. And and maybe it's Dallas, because they just beat the Avs and they got their number in the playoffs last year. So, if you have to give an answer, you might have to give Dallas, just because of the recent history against them.
It's interesting because I think we've kind of covered all the possible angles. I don't really count Vegas as a rival because, like you said, everybody hates Vegas. They're just the team that nobody likes. So I don't know that that's necessarily a rivalry. They have the one playoff series, right? It feels like you need more there probably in the playoffs to really turn that into a rivalry. Dallas is interesting. I think that could become a rivalry. They have the 2 playoff series, but the Avs need to win one, I think, before that one really becomes a rivalry. And then Utah is weird because I think if you ask the players, it seems like the players hate Utah the most, or what was Arizona the most. There was clearly some animosity between those players over a handful of the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Obviously, the McKinnon-Garland stuff with the helmet throw. But if you go back even before that, you're talking about the Zach Rinaldo sucker punch to Sam Girard and things like that. There's a little bit of that bad blood, I think, between those two teams, even if Arizona has not been particularly good. So I do think that one is interesting. And then, to be honest, the one I think is maybe most likely is Edmonton, just because you already have that McKinnon-McDavid storyline built in. You have this building up of Evan Bouchard to face Cale Makar. We'll see what happens with Draisaitl on his next contract deal, but maybe he slots into a similar role as Rantanen, even if he is better than Mikko. That one's the most intriguing to me of the bunch of potential options for the Avs. Avs have the one playoff win over Edmonton in the conference finals, too. So I lean toward Edmonton as maybe the most interesting one, but maybe it's Dallas. Maybe we'll be fighting with our fellow All-City team pretty soon here. I don't know. But if you had to pick one, which one would you like the Avs to be rivals with?
I also think that because the Avs are still a contender and still in the Cup conversation, that's going to kind of evolve itself through this season. This is, 3-4 years in a row now where the Avs, maybe even more than that, to be honest, have been, contenders for the Cup. So anybody that's sniffing at that is going to maybe try to give it a go, and that's going to increase some animosity depending upon how the season plays itself out. I mean, if the Avs come out of the gate and they're the hot to trot one, well, then some of these other teams that might have been put a little bit higher, and I know we just did our power rankings the other day, but if these other teams are like, well, wait a second, well, then every time they go up against the Avs, there's something to prove. And that rivalry could fortify itself this year from a team like Edmonton, who I argue is going to be good. I think Dallas is going to be good again. And, to Megs' point, I think the top teams on that side of the bracket are the ones that are going to start to kind of measure up and try to prove something throughout the year. And that normally leads to more intense games than what you see on a Colorado San Jose game.
True.
think from a league standpoint, marketing the rivalry that has such marquee stars at the top in Edmonton and Colorado makes so much sense if I'm rooting for one over the other. I think there's such a fun skill matchup that happens there. What intrigues me about, is Dallas the other option?
I mean, you could say anyone you want, as far as I'm concerned, but that Dallas and Edmonton would be my top two.
About the Taves, the hit he received from Jamie Benn.
Yeah.
And that is not enough, I think, to give birth to a rivalry. But I do wonder, on the Edmonton side, there is an Evander Kane, maybe.
If he's healthy.
Right, if he's healthy. There is a Corey Perry type. They seem
That's
to
true.
have become this wayward home for this type of player that I don't personally like, but maybe that is what a rivalry needs. And so I would have been curious to see what that most recent Edmonton team would have looked like against this last year's Avs. It probably would emerge as two teams ripe with potential to not like each other and make for some really entertaining hockey. Hopefully not too much extracurricular. I'm not necessarily advocating for that, but I could see that kind of thing being born from the type of players that Edmonton seems to be interested in.
I like the point Alyssa's making there too, because I was just about to say that is, I just feel the Avs is more player versus player than team versus team. I agree with that statement. You know, I think it's more. I mean, as a fan watching the Avs, I get hyped up when it's, you know, McKinnon versus McDavid. I get really excited. I get excited when it's Makar versus Quinn Hughes or Fox or whoever, right? I mean, I don't know. NHL.com's got Hughes at number 10 today, so I maybe have to use a different opponent for Makar. I was like, whoa. Anyway, that's besides the point. But yeah, I get excited when it's, you know, mano a mano, and I don't know. I mean, again, I agree with you guys. Edmonton's a good pick, but then again, I'm gonna go. Why not? I'm picking Minnesota just because, you know, like I want the fans on my side. I want Anthony and the fans on my side, and everybody hates Minnie, and you know, it's all good. You know, like it's funny. Some like AJ absolutely hates them. I know you hate them, and I'm going to jump on the mini bandwagon right now, meaning of hatred.
I can't take anyone seriously as a rival if they don't have any cups.
I love it.
Do want to talk about this more, but before we do, we are brought to you by UC Health. Get in on UC Health's new Ready, Set, Co challenge with Chief Motivational Officer Coach Prime from the CU Buffs. Look, the whole Ready, Set, Co program is just about getting everybody in Colorado a little bit healthier so they can take back our rightful place as the healthiest state in the country. Look, you don't have to do a ton of work. This isn't go full CrossFit, crazy workout stuff. It's just taking care of yourself a little bit better. Be like me. Eat a little bit healthier. I'm down like 35 pounds this year just by, you know, eating a little bit better. So it's not that hard. You can do it. Get in on the Ready, Set, Co program with UC Health. Join the challenge and help Colorado become healthier. If you want to get in on it, make sure you go to uchealth.org/readysetco today or click the link down in the show notes. And once you set yourself on a path to getting healthier, make sure you go check out a Toyota so you can go places to, you know, go for a walk on the trails, or maybe you just want to drive to the gym, whatever it might be. Toyota has you covered with 17 different all-wheel drive vehicles, so you can even get there in the winter. They've got 16 different hybrid vehicles, so you can be eco-conscious and make sure you're saving a bunch of money on that gas. That's really the big plus there. They've got trucks, they've got SUVs, they've got sedans, whatever it might be. Toyota has your vehicle covered. So go check them out at your Front Range Toyota stores, where you can get the official vehicle of DNVR at locations including AutoNation Toyota, Arapahoe and Centennial, Corwin Toyota in Boulder, Groove Toyota in Littleton, Mountain States Toyota in Denver, Stevenson Toyota East in Aurora, and Stevenson Toyota West in Lakewood. They're the official vehicle of not just DNVR, but the official vehicle of the Colorado Avalanche, too, over at Toyota. Second period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast. I think you're talking about Minnesota, Eric. This feels like the modern conversation, certainly for the Avs and maybe even for other teams. There's a lot of almost rivalries. It was building for a couple of years with Minnesota, and then it kind of fizzled. It felt like it was maybe building with St. Louis for a couple of years, and then it kind of fizzled. Felt like maybe Dallas is the next one, that maybe it'll get there, maybe it'll fizzle. I don't know how to fix this, because I know NHL has done things like Rivalry Night, and at the end of the year, everyone's like, haha, rivalry night. This is
they manufacture that a little too much.
And then it's Pittsburgh versus Florida, and people are like, what is this? I don't know. I just don't. Can it be manufactured, or does that next step for it to not fizzle? Does it have to be organic, I guess, is the question. How do you make it better?
Oh, boy, good question. And like I said, I think it's organically starts with the wins and losses, and it is what it is. Like I'm convinced of that, because if you're irrelevant in the standings and one team's relevant, there's really nothing. I don't care what people say. Like I said, oh yeah, let's ruin their season or whatever. Come on, I mean, you both got to be relevant. That matter, and I do believe it stems also from an event. It's not just a violent event, a bad hit or whatever, but it could be a controversial play. It could be a controversial. I mean, look at Dallas, Buffalo back then, the Brett Hall goal, right? You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, boy, oh boy, you talk to people from Buffalo, they absolutely hate Dallas. I mean, they just, they can't let it go. No goal, and they stole the Stanley Cup. I mean, I'm not saying it was no goal or it was a goal. I mean, it was no goal, but I'm just saying,
no goal.
That's my point. But I mean, it doesn't mean that Buffalo would have won the cup. If you talk to people from Buffalo, they act like, oh, they lost the cup.
Yeah, they still have to win that game and another one. Like,
they were far from winning it. You know what I mean? So I think it stems from events, or it stems from controversial events, or things like that.
Okay.
Which can't be manufactured unless a theme I'm seeing with some of the teams that the Avs just kind of hate that they don't see in the postseason, like Arizona or St. Louis.
Sure.
Is the weird games that they get scheduled for, like the games right out of the Christmas break
game, sure,
or the afternoon games. And it's not exclusive to St. Louis in any way, but I do think if the NHL was trying to manufacture them, they'd have more afternoon games. I'm not advocating for this. I think that's a terrible idea. But I do think that some of what has caused the issues with like Arizona, also the players just didn't like playing in Arizona. The ice was a little bit bad.
For sure.
I think that added to them just not generally liking it there. But Georgiev wanting to fight Bennington is in recent history.
That's true.
If St. Louis was a little better at hockey, I think that this would be a more relevant conversation.
Well, I mean, didn't Marchand just come out and say that he's a better person than Bennington is? I mean, that might create a little drama this season. I mean, those two guys going at each other a little bit. That'd be amazing. I would love to see Marchand and Bennington throw gloves down. So, I mean, I think it is stuff like that happens, and you throw a little jab out in the press, or something happens on the ice, and I don't know. The NHL could use it, that's for sure. It'd be fun if something like that sparked up, not just necessarily for the Avs, but if there was one really good one that you can just kind of like sit down with the popcorn and just be like, yeah, this is going to be great.
Is the NHL a little too buttoned up? Is that part of the problem? Like, I'm not advocating for like Brad Marchand to go back to licking people. That's too far the other direction. But again, I think this comes back to that conversation of like, maybe we need a little bit more personality out of players. This is a handful of years ago now, so I think we can tell this story, or maybe AJ's told it on the pod before, but years back, the Avs won an overtime game in Anaheim, and afterward there was an interview where someone on the Avs said, we hate this city. We don't want to play in this city. And it ended up not going out at the time. I think it was posted on Twitter for like 5 minutes and then got deleted because they didn't want that out there. Why not? Stuff like that is how you build rivalries, is a little bit of spiciness in the conversations, a little bit of talk. Look at the Avs' best rivalry right now is Mikko Rantanen versus Ismo Lehkonen. Like, that was awesome. Everybody loved that. It was a super cool thing. So maybe that they need to open up a little bit and let the players talk a little bit more shit. I don't know.
Maybe just plan some stuff the next time
there
you're
you
around.
go. Yeah, now you're talking.
Maybe just plan some stuff.
Well, I mean, you go back. Back then was nuts. I mean, you got to remember the NHL, like, it was a bit loosey-goosey in the 70s and 80s, and there were some weird things happening in those games, and I mean, guys fighting people in the stands, and again, the late Peter McNabb just climbing in the stands at MSG, and there's a
Mike
lot
Milbury
more
hitting
things.
fans.
Buddy, It was crazy at the old Boston Garden. The things that went on there, for example, I'm using that old building just because, if you were being ejected from the ice, you have to go through their bench. I mean, literally on their bench to go to your locker room. So a lot of shit happened, like in those exits. But there was a lot more, like coaches' interviews back then. I mean, go back and Google some like Don Cherry interviews when he was coaching. Holy crap! I mean, like it's a lot more of what you're asking right there. I think the NHL's been there, and I think they're trying. I think they went. I agree, way the other way. You know what I mean? Way too buttoned up, like you said. And I don't tend to disagree. But you got to find the right character to do it. Like, you know what I mean? And it's got to be done naturally. And when you have the right guy that does it, I think Patty was great. With if we go back to not that long ago. I mean, the '96 playoffs with Roenick, right? I mean, that was all manufactured. It's let's take that comment, let's turn this into a, a little sideshow, a little WWE. I can't hear him because I got my 2 Stanley Cup plugs in my ears, and again, that didn't just come on the spot. That was that was manufactured maybe a few hours before, right? Okay, let's use that, And I agree with you. Sometimes it's good. Sometimes some teams are masterful at it. Some teams, I mean, look at Paul Maurice. It doesn't get better than him, right? I mean, I think he's just masterful at sometimes, deviating the attention, or even Torts for that matter. Everything's calculated with Torts, and even as much as it's funny, I think it's hilarious, because I like him as a person. I think he's a phenomenal person. But it's funny when you see those pressers, and sometimes you're like, okay, what's he trying to do here? He's trying to do something, obviously. But it's fun, you're right. And sometimes it is too buttoned up. I agree with you, and I can't believe I'm saying that to you of all people, me saying that. I tend to agree with you a little bit.
Megs, next time you're in the room, just go up to Kale and be like, Hey, Kale, I'm really sorry about the comments Sydney made about you in Pittsburgh. I don't agree with them. I don't think anybody does, but good luck out there tonight. And boom, all of a sudden it's a mess. There you go. You just got to light the fuse a little bit. Talk about confusion.
Tyson Berry saying McKinnon is being thrown into the pool when he doesn't take morning skate.
Yep.
Who's going to ask McKinnon? So what are you doing?
Matrix
spins,
spins.
Are you really in the pool? See, but that wasn't malicious, so I know it would spark a rivalry. They would have a laugh at the media member who would ask McKinnon about the pool.
Another fair point from Melissa in our Toyota chat. It does boil down to players. Someone has kind of has to spark those things, and Nas is absolutely that type of player that will get things going a little bit at times, which sometimes not so great, and blindside catching people in the head. Sometimes not so great, terrible racism from other teams. But sometimes you need to spark a rivalry. I'm not condoning either of those things, but you need some shit stirrers, You gotta get things fired up a little bit sometimes.
I think that naturally will start to come out a little bit more. I think you're going to see it from a team perspective for the Avs if they come out the way that maybe we think they're going to come out this year if they have the year. I think you could see it. You could see, just because I know who's running the benches in these towns, but Dallas could look for a reason to start a little something with the Avs if they feel like they got a little bit of an edge on them.
All right,
it'd be fun.
Here's a fantasy theory. Gabe Landeskog comes back. The first person who tries to hit him, the entire team just jumps that guy. Doesn't matter who it is.
The new rivalry is born. The prophecy is fulfilled.
I'm not sure what your next break here is, but I would love it to be a betting option, because it would be really fun to see what that bet was if somebody does go after Landeskog in his first game back, if that sparks any drama. That's for sure.
Well, I've got great news, because we are brought to you by Bet365.
Look at me.
Take the over on penalty minutes in Landeskog's return game. You heard it here first. Jump on that one. Go do it with Bet365 and sign up with Bet365 today with that QR code on screen. Use the DNVR365 code when you sign up. Bet $5 on anything. You get $150 in bonus bets. Then you can throw that money on Landy to have over 10 minutes. I don't know.
I segued you not only perfectly, but spot on time as well.
It was nailed. Nailed right there. With the free money, you might as well have some fun bets like a Landy return or, pick McKinnon to win the Rocket this year. Why not? He had 50. I mean, he's not going to score more than Matthews. Don't take that bet. But anyway, go make some bets with Bet365, hockey related or not. You can bet on the KHL even if you want to watch Avs goalie prospect Ilya Nabokov. Their season starts in like a week. So you can find hockey bets if you want to with Bet365. Again, be sure to use that DNVR365 code when you play with Bet365. And if you are going to gamble, you must be 21 or older, physically located in Colorado. And if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER today. And once you've won some money with Bet365, make sure you also are getting a real job with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is rated as one of the best matching services, not just hiring, but matching services out there. 93% of employers agree that Indeed matches with better candidates than any other website, according to a recent Indeed survey. And you can join over 350 million global visitors monthly, according to Indeed data on their website. So there's tons of options out there. You can ditch the busy work with Indeed. You can schedule, screen, and message on Indeed so you get those connections made faster. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your job more visibility at Indeed.com/AllCity. That's Indeed.com/AllCity. Go there right now and support our show by letting them know you heard about it on this podcast. Indeed.com/AllCity. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire. You need Indeed. Third period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast. It just feels like there's so many hurdles with the current system. You can't really have a West Coast versus East Coast rivalry because you only play 2 games a year against each other. And if you're playing in the finals or if you're playing in the playoffs, it is the finals, right? And yeah, the teams probably don't like each other in the Cup finals, but you're also in the Cup finals. Like it's hard to feel bad about going up against an opponent there. So it's hard for me to see those East-West rivalries really, which makes it harder. But when you look around the league, I guess I'll ask you guys, outside of the Avs, are there any rivalries you think are budding? I know people love to point out like, oh, well, Seattle and Vancouver because they're so close or whatever, but I just don't feel like
they tried that.
Yeah.
I was there. I was obviously in Seattle in year 1, and they really tried. And I think, truthfully, where I think the mistake happened there was that it was very clear that, like, Seattle was trying to get that going.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
And Vancouver didn't care.
The media was punditing it, and it wasn't
natural.
Yeah, it wasn't natural. I think you got to kind of let those things evolve a little bit. But I don't necessarily think that proximity is. Again, I don't think proximity is the way to go. There was no real proximity between Detroit and Colorado. It was just
an
incident. It was something. I think any rivalry, player-based, team-based, it's got to be organic. Something has to happen.
It was wins. It was wins.
Yeah.
I mean, we were the best 2 teams. I don't care what people say. Like, we were the best 2 teams. People, they did their trade deadlines based on one another. I mean, they oh my God, they're doing this. We're going to do this. If they're not doing again in the summertime, there was some, I was like, oh, that we're going to react with this. They went and got Brendan Shanahan for that reason. You know what I mean? Like, you knew you had to get one another, and the best compliment you can have from those rivalries, and you guys know that I have all the respect in the world for those guys. I do, you know what I mean? Except 1 or 2 maybe, but other than that, you know what I mean? Like, those guys were awesome, and they thought the same of us. And I remember Kenny Holland, obviously GM at the time, and Scotty was coaching, and I remember him talking about the Avalanche, and the biggest nod of respect you could hear in Kenny's statement was very simple. He said, they made us better. The Avalanche made us better because we knew we had to crank it up, you know what I mean, in order, because we had to go through one another. And it was the same thing. I can tell you from the Avalanche side of things, the Red Wings made us better. I mean, they did. As much as you hate saying it, now looking back at it, now there's documentaries done on it, but it was an incredible time of our lives. I mean, all of us, and it was to the point where it became like almost like stupid, right? And I think Patty says it in the documentary. He's like, after 4, 5, 6 years, hey, what are we doing? What are we doing with this fighting shit? Let's just go win games now. Let's leave the fighting alone, and let's go win games, because you were so into it, you were so out of it, and there's so much hatred. Uh, and now you look back at it years later, and it's just like it was some special. And again, that's why I hate. Not that I hate doing a show like this today. I'm saying I love doing a show like this, but I hate to find a comparison, because there is none right now. You know what I mean? And it's hard, because especially as one that lived it, I was dead smack in it. And I'll tell you one thing: like, you'd get on the ice at the old Joe Louis and in warm up, and there wasn't an empty seat in warm up. It was packed. It was packed. It was. There was shenanigans going on, and in the press boxes, there was shenanigans going on, like in the hallways. Between locker rooms. I mean, it was just, honestly, it was like a soap opera. It was a movie. It was anything you want to call it, but it was real. You know what I mean? And it was real. Those brawls were real.
Do you remember the? And admittedly I was living in Detroit at the time, but do you remember do you remember like the stickers that they would put on the back of the car, and it was Calvin, taking a leak on something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was always Calvin taking a leak on a turtle shell with Claude Lemieux's, whatever, or the Avalanche logo. And I have to imagine that the exact same thing was going on here with like Mike Vernon.
A lot of Wings logos getting peed on around
Wings
here.
logos
for sure,
getting peed on. Like, I mean, that's just, you don't see that anymore. I mean, I haven't seen anything like that since '96. Like, you just don't see it.
Screw Lemieux, they had stickers.
Yes.
Big screw, and then there was Screw Lemieux, and
yeah.
I tell you, and I've said it before, like before the first brawl, like I remember I went out to eat with Pepe and a couple guys, not many, and then we were downtown Detroit there, and we were staying at the Athenaeum, or where, because you would know where that is, right there.
The Athenaeum there, yeah, right off the Renaissance Center.
Yeah, yeah, and then try to go for a dinner. I remember all of a sudden we're being followed. When I say followed, like, did I think someone's gonna? But I'll tell you one thing: they were normal looking dudes. You know what I mean? Like, just angry at Pepe. They recognized Pepe, and it was like you could hear them talk loud, like "Screw you, Lemieux," and it's like, all right, I think we're gonna turn around here, and I think we're just gonna go eat in our room. You know what I mean? Like, because this is not like. I mean, we had police escorts on our floors and at the hotel, and. I mean, it was ridiculous, and everyone was involved. And I've said it before. I've said it on the show. Like, I mean, if we didn't end up on the sidewalk at the Athenaeum maybe 3-4 times in my career, then we ended up there none. Like it was 3 a.m. all the time. And I remember telling a kid that got called up. It might have been Christian Matt. I'm like, yeah, see you at 2 tonight. And he's like, what do you mean? Like, are you going out? Or no, I'll see you on the sidewalk at 2, because the freaking whatever you call that, the alarm's going to be ringing.
Yeah.
The fire alarm's going to be ringing. We'll be on the sidewalk here. Don't worry about it. And then he was done. He's looking at me. He's like, "Oh my God!" I'm like, "Yeah, buddy, every time." You know what I mean? Like it's nothing new, and everybody was involved. You know what I mean? Like that's what I mean. Like the hotel people, and everyone was involved. It was a special time. It was a special time.
Is it the death of the enforcer role? Has that helped kill rivalries? Because there isn't that. Not fights still happen. There are still players that fight, but it's not. When you had a Scott Parker on your team or a Peter Worrell or something, and you're going into an opposing building, he was going to get into a fight, and the other team knew they had to prepare someone to fight him. Does that diminish the rivalry? And I don't condone violence. Whatever, fine.
No.
Does that take something out of the rivalry, or have teams found different ways to hype themselves up a little bit?
I think you got to find your different ways to hype yourself up, and it's such a different game, right? But you're right. You don't. There's no stage fighting really. You know what I mean? Like, and those guys, they had a tough job to do back then, and the game is just different today. That's it. You know what I mean? In order to play long. Those days are long gone of playing 1 minute a night, you know what I mean, and just looking for something. Now you got to be able to skate, got to be able to play. But there's a physical factor to the game. There's a physical aspect to the game, and there's competition, and there's passion, and there's So again, something's going to happen, and it always does, right? I mean, it's just like, oh God, it just happens, and like you said, you're okay with that. I'm okay with that. And but you're right. Maybe it's just changed a little bit, just because of how tough, you wanted to be. I mean, from the Broad Street Bullies in the 70s, right? I mean, they were built on toughness. They were built on, we're going to kick the shit out of you, and that's how we're going to win. And they did. That's how they got their Stanley Cup. And then the big bad Bruins were that way too. And, and then Islanders came in and we're like, okay, we're going to beat you with more skill. You know what I mean? And we're not going to be afraid of you because we'll respond. And they had guys like Clark Gillies and, that, man, oh man, he could fight anyone, but he also could score 30 and play with the likes of Mike Bossy and Brian Trottier. So they changed the game a little bit. And then, we all know what happened with the Edmonton Oilers after that. The greatest player in the world, Wayne Gretzky, that comes in. And those teams, you talk about skill, you know what I mean? But you still had to be tough. And so it kind of evolved a little bit, you know what I mean? And you're right, and now to the point where there is no enforcers in a sense. And it's more like, it just happens. When it happens, and it wasn't planned or it wasn't staged but yeah, the game's changed so much. But you're right. Back then, there might have been a little more rivalry. In the sense of because of that enforcer role, or even the influences. I'll be stupid here. Of the movie, for example, Slapshot. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? So where, they entice violence and let's go, and then fan bases were behind each other, and they'd go from there. So it's a different game now, and you're right. They stem from different kind of incidents than back then.
I apologize. I'm having trouble hearing him.
He mostly just talked about how it's just a different game now with the less enforcing in general.
Well, and I agree with that, and I worried too that I'd be repeating some of what Eric is talking about in talking about the evolution of the game. I think has led to an evolution of the role of enforcer. I still think it exists, but I think it exists differently from how it once did. And so I think that there are enforcers like Curtis McDermott, who I think are the blueprint of the original enforcer. But there are also players like Josh Manson who also serve a very important role on their team, but are known for being gritty physical players that would drop the gloves if the moment called for it. And with the rise of a player like a Manson, the kind of guy that is tough as nails, but is also really valuable to the team, you don't necessarily want him getting involved in the fighting.
Fair.
And I think this is also marked by the game becoming focused around speed and skill. The speed just continues to get quicker and quicker. I think the game just has changed too, and the league has cracked down on violent incidents.
True.
And so I think there's fewer motives for players to want to police the game where officials don't. But even still, I think the players that have that quality in them have to make difficult decisions. Like, is this worth enforcing right now? And so I think those things together have led to a decline in seeing fighting in the game. I even think back to, I was going to classify the Seattle series as a rivalry that looked like it could have been the birthplace of one on paper.
For sure.
But everyone involved really just wasn't that type
immediately
of player.
distanced themselves from it. Yeah.
Exactly. And like LOC answered for the Everly hit on Cog's behalf because of who they are as people, and then it was done.
Yeah.
It didn't need to be revisited because everyone knew Cale Makar's not that type of player. They hated it. And Eberle's not that type of player. We hated it.
Yep.
And so I think it's interesting too that there's just, the game is different. Players still answer for things, but the conversation, once it's done and once it's been had, it's kind of over with, so long as the intention behind it isn't super malicious and dirty, which I think was the case in the Seattle series. I don't think those were bad players trying to muck it up.
I agree. It's tough because I think you guys are right. The game has changed. So maybe this is much about how what a rivalry looks like has changed as much as anything else, because it's not, we don't live in an era where these two teams hate each other, so there's going to be a line brawl. We live in an era where these two teams don't like each other, so they're going to try and win the game by scoring more goals than the other team instead of trying to beat them into submission. And on one level, maybe that does feel a little bit less visceral, but on another level, maybe that actually gives you significantly better actual hockey being played on the ice. So there's some give and take there for sure.
Oh yeah, and I think if you go back even in those 80s, like I said, 80s, and you're right about that. Like Edmonton and Islanders were unbelievable rivals, and it was all about greatest team versus greatest team. There was a lot of goals scored, a lot of skill for back then, and I think that's kind of where the game's at now. You know what I mean? Where best teams will play hard. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, the skill shines, and that's why I love the Avalanche. I love their core group, and I think that, you know, by having a McKinnon and a Rantanen and a Makar allows you to play that game and to be exciting and to get people out of their seats and at Ball Arena and with magical plays and skill level that is unmatched really around the league. So yeah, I think that's where the game's gone now, to a skills competition, so to speak. But you still have to have drive. You still have to have, you know, competition and some fierceness, and, you know, and be ready to dig and all those attributes that make winning teams. But it's surely a little different and more accentuated on skill now, for sure.
The Broad Street bully days are gone.
Yep.
Right, you're not going to have a team that's just out to, you know, rock'em sock'em hockey. You know, I even think back. I mean, he might still be doing them. I don't know. There's no VHS anymore, but Don Cherry's rock'em sock'em hockey, and I mean, just some of those hits and the fights and the build up to that too. But yeah, the game's just evolved. It's just changed. It's become more skill based, and a lot of that has to do with so many of these young, talented guys just being so lights out that it's more about the ooh and the ah of the talent rather than the physicality.
Maybe some of it's the parity across the league too.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You guys mentioned the Chicago-LA trading back and forth. That was the last time it really did that, was a decade ago. You look at after that, and you kind of have, okay, you have Pittsburgh's era, but Pittsburgh won their 2 cups and then immediately fell off. All of a sudden, they weren't contenders anymore. You had that in between with St. Louis and Washington, where they were kind of one-off cup winners. Then you had Tampa's era. Maybe that's the closest. You get that Colorado-Tampa final for a 3rd cup for Tampa, possibly. But then Colorado won that playoffs, won the cup, and now Tampa fell off the cliff. They're still a playoff team, but barely.
And a lot of that has to do with the cap.
For sure. Cap is definitely part of that. But it feels hard to have a team that consistently plays at the top for a longer stretch. Like we saw in the 90s. It was the Avs, the Wings, and the Devils, right? That every year is like, yep, these are the best teams in the league. We'll see them in their conference finals. That's what it's going to be. It just feels like those teams are rotating a lot faster than they used to, which is probably good for hockey on the whole, right? But maybe not as good for building rivalries, because we see, look at the Avs second round. How many different teams have they played in the second round in this era? San Jose, okay, they played Dallas twice. Maybe that one gets in there. You've also seen Vegas. You've also seen St. Louis. I'm forgetting one too, but I can't remember what it is. Doesn't matter. My point is, it's not, oh, we played Dallas the last 4 years in a row in the second round or whatever it is. So it's tough.
Well, one of the commissioner's mandate was, in one of those work stoppage, was parity, right? I mean, to come out with parity. And I think they take pride in that as a league. They take pride in the fact that more teams realistically at the start of a season have a chance. Like you said, it's not just those 2 or 3 teams every year. It's, okay, they're going to win. I think now you have probably reaching in the double digits, right, of chances of real chances to win the team, depending on how things go and injuries and your path to the cup. There's some legit teams out there that can win it. So I think parity was a big thing that the commissioner wanted to bring, not just for himself, but probably mandated by the other owners, and that's who he works for. And I think mission accomplished on that. There's a lot more parity in this league now in the last dozen years or so. That's for sure.
I think kind of mentioning star power too earlier in talking
Yeah,
about
it's a good
Edmonton
point.
and Colorado, why that could be great for a new rivalry. I think what exists today is there are a lot of teams that have some of the stars around the leagues that don't necessarily have playoff success. And that is different from, I think, what made earlier rivalries so successful, like Red Wings and Colorado at the time had players that were among the best in the league at the height of their career. Whereas I think there's a lot of variance. Like just seeing, a player like Austin Matthews continue to be one of the best players in the NHL, but Toronto continues to have some postseason troubles. It does feel like they're gradually making some progress in the postseason, but I'm sure to the fan base from that perspective, it's very frustrating. And even Edmonton, before the last couple of seasons, has experienced so much struggle that it felt like wasted years for players like McDavid and Draisaitl. And so I think that those things working together worked better in the past than it does today. And I think the cap is a large part of it. I think that players that are, at the height of their game, it's harder to keep those salaries. And so it's just leading to more of that talent getting spread throughout the league more often.
Yeah.
Maybe Nashville creeps into a rivalry conversation this year if they end up gelling with the moves they made in the offseason. I know I've said that a couple of times, but I mean, I'm hearing a lot. I was just this weekend, I was in up in Half Moon Bay with a bunch of former NHLers for that professional athlete golf tour. And it's funny, they had one of the holes, they had somebody doing like one-off quick interviews with guys and asked 7 or 8 of them who they thought the Stanley Cup champion was this year, and more than 50% threw Nashville into that mix.
Yep.
So if Nashville comes out super hot with the additions they made, maybe there's some teams that are like, the heck, how do we miss out on this? Maybe that sparks a little something.
Yeah, I mean, you go back far enough. The Avs had a couple of playoff series against Nashville back at the early parts of their current era. So maybe there's something there that people were really mad at PK Subban way back then in 2018. So I don't know.
It's hard to be mad at Johansson over Kemper's eye. It's
that was
sucks.
purely incidental. And the Avs were just so much better than that team that year that it didn't feel like it mattered that much. It's I don't know. It's just hard to generate a true rivalry in modern sports. It feels like maybe in part just because of that's the world now. Things happen so quickly and you move on to the next thing so quickly that it doesn't stick around quite as long. But
I'll give Fu some love too. He's saying there was the Kozlov hit on footy. I'll give him some props there. I think it goes back to what we've been saying. Avs, Wings, 2 great teams. Avs new to the parade in the sense that Red Wings had shattered the league record the year before for most wins or whatever it was, and got upset against Jersey in the first round. Claude Lemieux and the New Jersey Devils, kind of started right there a little bit, but all of a sudden, you have to get through one another, and then, the hatred didn't start. When I say hatred, is the hate for one another didn't start till that Kozlov hit on footy, which was a dirty hit. It was a nasty play, and again, I think it was born a little bit there, and of course, the Lemieux Draper incident was what took it to a different level. But I'll give Fu some love. He's right. He's a good historian. The Kozlov hit on footy really got the hatred started between those 2 teams.
yeah, I mean, we could talk for hours and hours about that Avs-Wings rivalry, I'm sure. But we are getting towards the end of today's show. I did want to give Megan a little bit of time here, as with her announcement on her new adventure. So, Megan, if you want to say anything, now's the time.
I won't take up too much time here. I just wanted to thank not only you guys here who've been working with me. I know you're newer to working with me.
Yeah, you're great, though.
Tough.
It's been fantastic.
And so I'm so grateful to all of you that I've gotten the chance to work with. It has made this experience so incredible. But I also wanted to thank all of you who are watching and listening at any point in time, because it wouldn't have been possible to have this door open to me through DNVR and keep on it for the last 3 seasons if you hadn't enjoyed to some extent the work that I was doing. And I'm so grateful that you saw some value in the work that I was doing to follow along for the ride through this point. And I'm so grateful for that as well. Obviously, I've alluded to not going too far, so you'll still be able to follow along with the work that I do, and I still think you'll be very interested in it. But I wanted to make sure to thank everyone who's been there each step of the way. I'm so excited for what's coming next, and I think it's important for me to keep this short because if I go on any longer, I have to confront the parts of this decision that were really hard on me because I did enjoy working with these people here so much, and it still hasn't, the decision's been made and it still hasn't been easy. So I'm excited for what's next, but I'm closing what I'm going to look back on as a really, really great chapter here at DNVR.
Yeah, we're certainly going to miss you around here. It'll be a change for sure for us without Megan around, but she did done great work here, and at least we still will get to see you around the rink and things like that since you're sticking around sort of. So it won't be too different, but it'll be sad that we don't have you on the show every day and have your written pieces and stuff like that. So just did want to give you that opportunity. You'll still be on for a couple more days this week before the real change does happen, but the news is pretty much out there if you follow her on Twitter and stuff like that. We appreciate everything you've done for us, Megan. It's sad to see you go.
Thank you, Rudo.
So running for president then?
Yeah, I'm lacing up the skates, guys. I've solved the fourth line center problem.
The Avs need one, so
There it is. I was just going to say,
what?
need
In
another
talking
center.
about enforcers,
Megan can throw hands.
I can throw
it's true,
hands.
for sure.
Have fun, follow your heart, and keep doing great work. And you know where to find people, you know where to find us, and we're always going to be here for you.
Thank you,
Yep,
Eric.
of course. And then we do have one super chat here from Tyler who gives $10 and does say, good luck with the Avs, Megan, rumor boy stuff. Thank you very much for the super chat.
Thank you, Tyler.
Yeah, we can keep the show a little bit shorter today. No big deal. I think we kind of covered the rivalry conversation. Tomorrow, we are interviewing Tony Granato, former Avs coach. Should be a fun one. Lots of stuff to talk about with him. So be sure to tune in for that show and make sure you're checking out all our other content. There is another video of mine that's dropping tomorrow as well. So keep your eyes out for that on YouTube too. Like and subscribe. Do all that good stuff that helps support us. If you really like us, consider becoming a diehard at thednvr.com. We are out of here until tomorrow. We'll see you later.
We all silly like the mayor.